Our third divisional presentation comes from the Sustainable Agri-Food Sciences Division, joined by Scientific Director Professor Elizabeth McGowan, who will introduce the session, and then we'll hear from Dr. Lisa Black on land use and crop management, followed by Dr. Conrad Ferris on sustainable livestock systems.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. Do you want to stand up? You have been sitting a long time. If you want to stand up, shake and sit down again. I thought that way, because I am in the graveyard shift here. Okay, sit down again. Hopefully that has helped a little bit. So, now that you've been refreshed by that elevation, you're very welcome to AFBI Hillsborough this morning. You are now going to get a very whistle-stop tour of this strategic priority. But and Conrad and Lisa will take you into a deeper dive around livestock and land use sciences that we're planning to take forward. But I thought, first of all, to set the context, it was good to remind us of what agriculture actually is. And this definition I thought patented it very well. Agriculture is the practice, science and art of cultivating plants and livestock for food, fibre, additional plants and other products used to sustain and enhance human life. So within this strategic priority, we're very focused on agriculture across land, food and even in stretching into medicinal plants, which Lisa will touch on. So our overarching goal is through scientific innovation, investigation and development of novel strategies and tools, AFBI will improve the economic performance, very importantly because that is key to sustainability, as well as the environmental sustainability of agriculture and its resilience against a changing climate. So we have 4 overarching goals within this priority. The first one unapologetically focuses on livestock and reducing the environmental impact of those livestock, but importantly, doing it in such a way that also optimises productivity and therefore profitability for our farmers, whilst also protecting and indeed enhancing animal health and welfare in its widest sense, animal well-being, a life worth living. We want to harness the power of data. We've heard about data and modelling so much today, but we want to harness the power of that data to produce models and decision support tools. Anybody who has heard me before knows that it's not all about cows for me, believe it or not. I do love them, but it's not all about cows and pigs and sheep. It is also about our land and how we can optimise the value from our land in an environmentally friendly way, but optimising that value for the economy and for our farmers. And lastly, but by no means least, adapting to climate change. Climate change actually brings opportunities for Ireland and Northern Ireland. So we want to explore what those are and harness them. So to take you a little bit deeper into each of those 4, and to be fair, Conrad will take us on a deeper journey whenever it comes to our livestock agenda. We focus on all 5 of the main livestock species, and we're very fortunate to have a strong platform here at AFBI Hillsborough and linked with Loughgall and Crossnacreevy as well, to really explore the impact of feed and forage. That's the big driver of efficiency, and of course efficiency will underpin our sustainability and our reduction of our environmental impact. So we have a lot of work going on methane inhibition and indeed technologies to reduce methane from our animals, and Conrad will touch a bit more on that going forward. But not only methane, because it's about nitrogen and phosphorus as well, linking back to what Peter Yan was telling us with regards to challenges in our ecosystems. Swards are a really important part of our ecosystem as well, and of course former foods to drive that circular bioeconomy. There's a huge opportunity with former foods, especially in our monogastric sectors, to harness that. Our focus on our animals will very much be about looking at the genetics and indeed the genomics of our animals. We have built now over the past number of years a very substantial database of phenotypes linked with genotypes of our research animals on very hard to measure traits. So feed intakes, feed efficiencies, residual feed intakes, the methane from those animals, the phosphorus excretion from those animals. There's 8 PhD students sitting at computers mining that as we speak, applying AI and machine learning techniques to try and understand new traits for the future linked with sustainable ruminant genetics programs going forward. Reducing waste, ill health detection, again technology to reduce waste, again drive efficiency, and interactions with our biodiversity, especially in our upland farms, and working very closely with our colleagues in Suzanne's world. And lastly, but by no means least, slurry, and it's the interventions on slurry, again, to reduce emissions and drive that circular bioeconomy. But data underpins a lot of this, and where this is slightly different to what Peter Yan was describing as well, this takes it as well right through to economic modelling, linking all that biology and that underpinning data and information we're gathering from our soils and from our animals and from our systems, and linking that to our economics. Because at the end of the day, it is money that makes AFBI go round, as Sally said, but also makes the world go round. We're very fortunate to have an instrumented farm here, but also working with at least 50 farms with our partners in Agri-Research and our new UK GCN networks right across Northern Ireland. And indeed we've a further 50 farms we're linked with across the UK as a whole. So that creates a massive database of real farm information that we're harnessing and mining. So that data is used to measure, report, verify, creating those MRV pathways, model new solutions, and ultimately generate new knowledge, new technologies, influence farmers, influence government policy, and support those changes, assess the impact of what we're trying to do, as well as that radical disruption. And really, we do need radical disruption if we're going to achieve the goals and feed that population. Even the UK's population will increase significantly in the next 10 years. The really ambitious piece here is to try and get to an integrated modelling framework that tries to help understand and measure how we can have a just and safe operating space for agriculture in Northern Ireland, whilst also driving its sustainable economic development. That's a huge challenge. That's really ambitious. So it brings together a lot of the information you've heard today and applying economic modelling on top of that. That's where the just transition comes in. The safe transition comes in whenever we try to understand what we call the planetary boundaries. This is very much for demonstration. We haven't built this yet. This is what we want to build over the coming years, using all that data we have gathered and our modelling expertise, linking that with our economists and bringing their expertise to it. As I said earlier, it's not all about cows. Land is very, very important in this journey as well, and I'll let Lisa's presentation dig into this a little bit more. But our current modelling would suggest that whilst grassland will remain and swards and livestock will remain very much the predominant practices for agriculture in Northern Ireland due to our climate and our soil conditions, etc., there is opportunity for alternative crops, and we're starting to explore those. Some of those could be for protein products in feed, etc., but also those medicinal products, and that's mallow in the middle of the picture. But again, really importantly, linking that through to the economics of all of this. What is the economics of alternative land management? How does that relate to carbon credits? Where does our woodlands fit in? How can we integrate trees into our landscapes? Lastly, but by no means least, climate change adaptation. We have to do all of this whilst also adapting to the climate. As I said earlier, our analysis to date would suggest there are opportunities from climate change, because we will see, and we're forecasting with our grass check modelling, we are forecasting and predicting increases, about 2 tonnes of extra dry matter of grass per year out to 2050 and beyond. But that grass will be more volatile because of more volatile weather patterns throughout the year. That grass growth will be more volatile, but we will see improvements at the shoulders of the years. So how can we harness that and utilise that for the benefit of the industry? Alternative swards bring a lot of opportunity as well to that changing climate. And you've mentioned, just it's been sporadic here, but environmental DNA, our plant health team have really taken forward and made a massive leap forward in using environmental DNA to help understand how we can protect our plants, especially our forests, from emerging pests and pathogens. So, as I say, there's no point planting all these trees if we can't keep them healthy. And environmental DNA, using the water that's dripping off them and air, to help us understand where those pests and pathogens are coming from and manage them accordingly. So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour, but I'm going to hand over now to Lisa, who will take us a bit deeper into the land aspects of it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks Elizabeth, and good morning everybody. So I'm going to do a very brief presentation. I have 5 slides I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear. So in terms of the AFBI strategy in the space of future land use and crop management, the sort of scientific objectives are really to explore and test opportunities for alternative land use, and that might be high value crops, for example. As Elizabeth said, with the changing climate, there's potential there. That could also help to maybe mitigate and help with addressing environmental issues around the livestock sector. We want to reduce the environmental impact of the Northern Ireland food system. So can we have landscapes that require less inputs? And we can do that through working with plants. We want to support food and energy security. And we also want to enable the food system to adapt to climate change. So that's a really key thing, as climate changes, the plants we can grow and the varieties we can grow changes too. So I want to focus on the role of plants in the pathway to resilience and sustainable agricultural systems, and I want to do that through sort of showcasing a couple of pieces of work and talk more generally about resilient sustainable agricultural systems. So I'm going to first focus on plant breeding, and then move into plant variety testing, and then move into the wider systems approach. I would say that every seed that is grown, every agricultural seed that is sold and grown in Northern Ireland has gone through a breeding process, a very extensive breeding process, and also has to be tested for varieties to be marketed. They have to go through statutory testing, so breeding and testing go hand in hand. Focusing first on plant breeding. The AFBI grass breeding programme is over 70 years old, and it's been hugely successful and impactful. We have currently since 1998, we've had 39 AFBI bred varieties on the UK and Irish recommended list. We currently hold the top spot on the Irish recommended list for PPI, which is Pasture Profit Index. So that's really giving value to farmers in terms of what they're getting out of the money they spend on seed and managing crops. And over 70% of the land in Northern Ireland is farmed, and 95% of that is grassland. So grass is hugely important to Northern Ireland and productivity and the food system in Northern Ireland. What we need to do going forward is make sure we're breeding climate resilient varieties that are really fit to cope with the challenges that the weather is throwing at us going forward. And part of that is definitely looking at future trait developments. Going back to impact a little bit, if we look at the graph on the left-hand side, what we can see is that breeding increases the productivity of grassland production about 0.5% a year. So since 1998, that equates to about 14% improvement in dry matter yield, roughly. The middle graph there you'll see shows a very erratic picture, and that is really the impact of weather. And it creates very erratic dry matter production, and we really are at the mercy of weather in terms of how we produce silage and the impact on management there. So that's why climate resilient varieties are really important. That's why future trait development is really important. And in the AFBI grass breeding research programme currently, we have introduced genomics into that. And we're also really extending ourselves internationally. We have been building links with China and Australia as well, and also locally. And we've just actually submitted a proposal for an EU project looking at next generation breeding strategies. And our intention by 2030 is to have improved platforms where we can do high throughput phenotyping with drones and robotics. Really advancing our genomics in terms of physiological and molecular marker identification, and use all that in AI-driven platforms to really push forward breeding strategies to develop those varieties that are going to be resilient going forward and productive. So it's important to be resilient, to be mindful of the climate and the environment, but also maintain productivity. Moving on to variety evaluation, as I said, all breeding has to go through this. It's a statutory process, and AFBI has been doing variety testing for over 50 years. So as well as the breeding and the testing, we have a huge database of information on plant response changes to weather and climate. And based on our expertise in varieties testing, we really are at the forefront of international research efforts to innovate in plant variety testing. And just to showcase one project, Innovar, which AFBI led, that was a European-wide project looking at how we could bring new technologies into variety testing to really innovate conventional practices that have been done previous to that. So again, genomics, phenomics, machine learning, integrating weather data. And one of the key things we achieved in Innovar was proposing a categorization system which focused on plants' ability, varieties' ability to still maintain performance but with reduced input, so high performance, low risk. And this really speaks to the environmental agenda. It's maintaining productivity without having the requirement for so many inputs, so it's an economical agenda as well. And within the UK and also on a wider European basis, this project has been very impactful. The UK government authorities looking after the regulation of plant variety testing have very much taken on the findings of the project, and we're moving towards testing programs that really do look for traits of resilience and sustainability in plants, rather than just focusing on what is the highest yield you can get with unlimited inputs. So it's a real shift, and from a European perspective, that shift is paralleled, and what we're doing is producing protocols, VSCU, which is Value for Sustainable Cultivation and Use. So how does this all fit into the wider agricultural system? The graphic in the middle is my attempt to show that plants really are at the heart of the environment, in terms of growing in the soil. We need healthy seeds, we need plants that influence the soil, that have help with soil health. And then obviously plants do create the landscape and ultimately impact the environment. So plants, to me, really are at the heart of it all. And going forward, we want to develop some of the work that we have already started in the areas that you can see there. So cover crops really are a really fantastic tool for ensuring we don't have soil erosion and nutrient loss from the system in fallow periods potentially. Novel crops, as Elizabeth said, we do have some PhDs and work going on where we're looking at, for example, mallow, which is creates a bioactive which can be used in pigs as a therapeutic to mitigate against the loss of zinc oxide. So these are high value crops, and part of the issue is, we don't have agronomic toolkits for these crops, so that's what we're doing. We're developing that to see if we can optimise these important and valuable products. As well as that, we're looking at plants and methane reduction, working very much with Sustainable Livestock branch here in Hillsborough. And I mentioned trees there because obviously, there's an intention to have more trees in the landscape, but we need to know how to optimise those in the agricultural landscape as well. Protein crops, Elizabeth mentioned, but which ones, which species, which varieties are best? And how do we maybe incorporate those into intercropping or multi-species swards, for example? And there's been a lot of really good work done on multi-species swards across AFBI and across Ireland and beyond. One of the key areas where I think there needs to be more focus on is looking at the components of multi-species swards. There's a lot of information on, for example, grass and clover, but we need more information on, the herbs and, the varietal difference in performance and suitability to different land types. And then I mentioned organic manures there because, in a cyclical agricultural system, we need to be able to utilise those animal waste products, which have valuable nutrients in, but we need to know what crops and which varieties respond well to that and are best able to optimise the landscape. And what I would say is, the Minister mentioned about multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary. We really do work in that space, and we work within AFBI with colleagues in the soil department, in livestock, bacteriology even, but also nationally and internationally as well. And it's a really exciting space with a lot of future in the next 5 years, is it? 5 years, I forget what year it is. Final message, varieties, species, systems. And, I can't overemphasise enough the importance of varieties. For example, on the white clover list for the UK, there's actually a 45% difference in the performance of white clover of the existing cohort of varieties that are listed there. So having, looking at productivity of the land without considering varieties is, we need to consider varieties. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, as a slightly bit of a sigh of relief, it's the final presentation. So, I'm going to speak about driving efficiency within livestock production systems. I'm going to just begin by highlighting that here at Hillsborough and on other sites we have a unique science farm platform. And on this site we have our dairy herd, one of the highest PLI herds in the UK, as well as our beef, sheep, pig and poultry enterprises. This platform is supported by a network of co-research farms around Northern Ireland, as already been mentioned. And on this site we have scientists with both sector-specific and cross-cutting expertise across a wide range of areas. Within the vast majority of our research projects we have got PhD students embedded, and we also have a wide range of national and international collaborations. We've got a wide range of specialist facilities here, some of which are highlighted on this slide. So really for this presentation I'm just going to touch on 5 key areas I see really important to our science going forward. There are many others, but I just need to touch on these 5. And the first one is really mitigating climate change, which has been extensively mentioned today. If I look back on some of our significant achievements over the last number of years, probably one of the key ones is the contribution of Hillsborough to quantifying and understanding drivers of methane emissions from ruminant livestock. Over the last number of decades, we have placed over 2,500 animals through our respiration calorimeters to measure methane production and get a really good understanding of methane production. But as we look forward, industry collaboration to develop and test new approaches to methane reduction is absolutely key, and we're currently involved in that with a number of commercial organisations. As part of that, we need to get a better understanding of the microbiome and the linkages there within the rumen for methane production. While methane is so important, nitrous oxide emissions and our ability to reduce those, and again as already been mentioned, developments in fertiliser and manure management, absolutely key to doing that. In all of this, we need to make sure we avoid pollution swapping, and that's when we do something in one part of the farm that has a negative impact on another, and our whole farm scale modelling approaches, of which we have skills to allow us to do that, is key to do that moving forward. Local and international collaborations, again, are absolutely key to mitigating climate change, and one really good example is the UK Dairy Carbon Network, which AFBI is the lead on, and which is a network of farms seeking to reduce carbon emissions. As well as methane, we do need to focus on the other nutrients, especially nitrogen and phosphorus, as already been highlighted. And in terms of our significant achievements, we have done a major piece of work over many years on reducing phosphorus and nitrogen inputs to both pig and dairy cow diets and other species as well. And we've clearly demonstrated we can do that without a loss of performance. And that has led to substantial reductions in nitrogen and phosphorus inputs. But again, as we look forward, we need to probably continue to move down that same route with further reductions, and that's where precision management and precision nutrition will come in. We also need to make sure that we maintain the gains that we've already had, and we know that is at risk if we are forced down the route of soya-free diets and increased use of byproducts. So we need to make sure that we can incorporate those components without, again, starting to increase our pea surpluses. Animals will always excrete phosphorus and slurry, so we are also trying to see how we can remove that phosphorus, and that's an active work programme and will continue to be so going forward. We'll continue to look at novel strategies to reduce ammonia emissions, and probably key to all of this, including the whole area of methane reductions, is our proposed ruminant emissions research facility. It's a building which is hopefully going to be built if we get final permissions within the next few months to allow us to capture information on all inputs and all outputs on animals on a whole system scale. Moving on to precision nutrition, and again, this is an area we've done major work on over many years. Way back a number of decades, feeding the high genetic merit cows. We led that work within the UK. We developed the Hillsborough Feeding Information System, which was a world-leading system in terms of predicting silage intake using NIRS. We were a key partner in feed into milk, feed nut, feed into beef, as well as feed into lamb. And on the pig side, we've defined protein and energy requirements across a whole range of life stages of the pigs. But looking forward, we need to continue to improve our nutritional models, and we need to seek to see how we can incorporate proxies such as MIRS analysis of milk to allow us to better ration our feeder animals. Specific areas we're interested in is supplementing specific amino acids to dairy cows to see if we can reduce protein levels in the diet even further. But in all of this, the increased use of precision technology is going to be key. One example is with so many robotic milking systems now on farms, and the feeders in those farms that allow us to very specifically target nutrients to individual cows. That use of precision allows us to bring about improvements in efficiency. And of course, part of this is nutrigenomics. You know, the picture in the top right-hand corner shows a row of cows. They all look the same, but our own residual feed data indicates that they're all very different in terms of efficiency. Can we feed them differently? Is that the approach we should be taking as we go forward? That's an area that we will start to look at, hopefully. And while most of my slides so far have been very much focused on more the intensive side of production, we must not lose sight of optimising our forage base. And over the last 25 years, AFBI Grass Check has been providing information to farmers to allow them to understand grass growth on a real-time basis, looking forward as well, and to allow them to monitor that or to utilise grass more efficiently. We're also really involved in the whole development of rapid wilting technologies and techniques within the UK, bringing a huge amount of science to that whole side of things. But as we look forward, optimising milk from forage, be that grazed grass or grass silage, remains key. And that might sound like a very old mantra. It's one that I've spoken of many times over the years, as has my predecessors, but I think it is one we must never lose sight of. Part of that will also involve harnessing the use of alternative forages, some of which have been mentioned, and legumes, I believe, will play a key part going forward. Precision management, again, will be key in terms of optimising our forage base. And again, as been mentioned, how we adapt to climate change within and optimise our forage base is critical. The graph at the bottom corner is our own prediction models showing how grass yields are going to increase through to the end of this decade, but we know that that's not going to be always easy to manage just because of when that grass grows and how climate will affect that. So that's something we really need to look forward to. And finally, I'm going to just finish up on a slide on driving genetic progress. So we've been involved in cross-breeding programs, we've evaluated alternative cow genotypes, but as we look forward, global collaborations are key to anything we do in terms of genetic progress. And next generation genetic selection, as already been said, is going to be driven by data. And here in Northern Ireland at AFBI, we've got our Northern Ireland Farm Animal Biobank, which contains a huge number of records which will be absolutely key as we seek to make genetic progress. Genetics is going to drive efficiency, nitrogen use efficiency, lower methane emissions, disease resistance, and ultimately profitability, which is what it must do. And in doing that, we'll be optimising the use of new approaches, the omics, the multi-omics, the data sciences, as already been mentioned today. And finally, the research that AFBI is going to do in genetics will underpin the SRG as we move forward. Finally, the last slide just really sums up some of the key areas that I believe are going to be important for us: efficiency, precision, adaptation, technology, data, collaboration. All absolutely key to our livestock research programs as we move forward. Thank you very much.